Terry Tateossian, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited for this conversation. I know everybody says that, but I've been looking for a while to speak to someone about women in midlife, perimenopause, around like mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s, who have forgotten one, who they are, but they don't understand where to go next. How do I take care of myself? How do I reinvent myself? All of that stuff. And this is an area that you have a lot of experience in. Your story alone is quite inspiring. You've shown a lot of perseverance over the years for a start, especially having kids and reinventing yourself. So, can you share a bit about your story before we kind of get into the overall topic?
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I think we're going to have a really awesome conversation. So, to give everybody a little bit of a background story, so I entered the workforce at about 24, 25, right out of college. And I was working in the IT industry for many years. And, just like all normal women, I pursued the corporate ladder. I had children. Eventually, I left the corporate field and I started my own company and worked very hard, 18, 19-hour days while raising two children, household, family, parents, everything. And eventually I found myself at 37, 80 pounds overweight. And I was hospitalized on top of that twice by that time because I thought I was having all kinds of heart pains and chest pains, and I had pre-diabetes as well at that time. Uh, and all because obviously I was overweight. And unbeknownst to me, at 37, I had also entered perimenopause. And so all these things all together, all at the same time, really forced me to stop everything I was doing and start addressing all of my health issues. And so that's where the story really begins, is when I decided to leave the corporate world, leave my business essentially, reassess my entire lifestyle, figure out what was working, what was not working. And I had to swim through so much information out there about what to do. And it seems like there's a lot of misinformation really out there. Eventually, I found that there are 40,000 books on Amazon on dieting and all kinds of things. So if you can just imagine the complete overwhelm that a person faces when things are not going in the right direction health-wise, and you're trying to figure things out, and you're going to the medical industry and you're not getting a lot of answers, and things are just getting more and more confusing. It's very frustrating. And so that's what I went through essentially about 11 years ago.
So, unfortunately, what you just said is too common nowadays. Literally everything you said, right down to the hospital experiences, I'm hearing left, right, and center. Like, this is common. But if we are to step back to what you said in the very beginning, you said, I did what every woman normally did. Like, this is normal for us to leave school and jump straight into the career and then have the kids and blah, blah, blah. Is it normal though? Is it really? I have this conversation a lot. And I don't believe it's normal if we reflect on our grandmothers and our great grandmothers and how they lived and worked. And I was even saying this to my husband the other day. My granny had 9 kids. She didn't work. She stayed at home. She baked all our food. She had a garden. She took care of the kids. Like, she was an amazing woman, way better than what we are. We could not deal with 9 kids. And I'm sure if your grandmother was from Europe as well, she had a lot of kids too. The thoughts of us even having 9 kids now, like, I that just scares me. I want to cry. There's no way I could have 9 kids. But that was normal. And we were healthier then than we are now. And we were slimmer then than we are now. And you know what? We had less rates of divorce and mental health issues in our kids then than we do now, because the woman was at home holding the family together, being there for the kids, cooking homemade meals. She was taking care of herself so that she could be there for her husband, so the husband wouldn't get distracted by a younger version. There's so much to consider. And then you look at how we're doing it now, and everyone wants to be the top dog and successful and hustle and grind and an Instagram influencer and everything. Yet we're more dysfunctional and unhealthy than we've ever been. And women, I would argue, are struggling more than ever, not just with the weight and the health, but with our hormones more than ever. What do you agree with that? Do you
I
disagree?
100% I agree. It took me, it was a very difficult realization for me at about 40 years old when I realized that everything I have been conditioned to think about what it meant to live in this world and what defined success, what defined wealth, for example, right? It was always geared towards professional monetary gain, right? So I was conditioned from a very young age, immigrant family, right? European family coming to the United States. Everything was about your profession, your education, how much money can you earn? Can you have a stable environment? And so it was very, very eye-opening and extremely sad for me when I realized that that was all complete BS, and that instead of learning how to be a woman, and that could mean a lot of different things, right? And learning how to embody my own energy and do things in the right way that I understand now, I was spending my entire life being somebody else that society told me and my family told me and that my community and so forth, parents, etc., told me that I needed to be. And so we're spending a lot of our energy and our minds nowadays being trying to be everything and ultimately succeeding at nothing. So I agree with you 100%. We're sicker than ever, we're more overweight than ever. We're struggling more with mental health more than I've ever seen in my life. Social media is changing children's brains and doing all kinds of things that we don't even yet understand what the repercussions are going to be down the road. All of these different pharmaceuticals that people are on with no discrimination, really. You know, you have one little symptom and almost instantly there's a pharmaceutical drug that pops up out of nowhere and you start taking it with no idea how that's going to affect you 10 years down the road. And this is just keeps repeating over and over again. I just don't understand how more people are not realizing that we're heading in a very odd direction.
Mm, dangerously odd. I would add in as well, in the context of women and women in midlife. And when I'm saying midlife, I'm referring like 35 to 50, that kind of bit. Even though I know that's still young, that's what I'm referring to. Women are more unhappy than they've ever been, and we take happiness for granted. We really do. And there's you get to a stage. I speak to a lot of women who own their own businesses, very successful women, because of the population of Canada and Alberta overall. There's higher rates of success because there's less people, more opportunities. That these women, they're incredible women, but then they're reaching out to me because they're so unhappy, they're emotional, they're not sleeping, their hormones are out of whack, the perimenopause symptoms are ruining their lives. And a lot of the times we get to the stage where we're having this conversation of, is it worth it? Is it worth it to be successful, to run your own business, to have a calendar that says you're busy being busy all the time, like go, go? Is it worth it when we're, excuse my French, we're fucking miserable going around? There's a lot to be considered here. I really think, yes, we can point the finger at nutrition and Netflix if we want to, but we also need to point the finger at society and how it's been designed now to almost demand us to be doing something.
Absolutely. That's exactly where I found myself at about the age of 40. And the interesting part was, you know, I can look at it from both perspectives, right? So up until I was 40, I was doing certain professions that may not necessarily have aligned with my values. I didn't really know what it meant to do something that gives you purpose, that gives you joy, that you feel productive doing without draining your energy. I didn't know that that was even a possibility for me. And so I was choosing professions that I was very good at and I could do really well, but they weren't truly fulfilling in terms of what my values were.
Mm,
And so it was a very draining experience, right? Because you're giving your time and your energy towards something that's not giving back to you in a way that means something. And everybody's a little bit different, right? And now I have the opposite experience where I am working and I am doing things, but they don't feel like work anymore. They feel like something I would be doing regardless if I was getting paid or not. And there's a service component to that as far as, for what's in my values. I provide a service. I'm there to serve and give myself in service to other people to help them change their lives. And that is extremely fulfilling. It's almost like what people call finding your purpose, except I didn't find my purpose, it found me. And I feel extremely grateful and lucky to be here, to be able to share this information and my experience with other women because I want them to know that it is possible. You don't have to give up your income, your financial resources, your identity. You don't have to give those things up. You can still have a career, but maybe possibly a career that's more highly fulfilling, that's not draining you.
mm. And I think a lot of women are saying in an ideal world, and if they're thinking the way I'm thinking, and obviously I'm quite blessed with what I do, but honestly, sometimes I'm like, no, I'm done. But it, I don't think it's even realistic, and of course, push back on me to think that everybody or every woman could do something that is aligned with their purpose. I just don't think that society is even designed that way anymore. And I also think a lot of women just accept things the way they are and they just go. It's almost that kind of sense of the odds are stacked against us right now. It's very hard. It's all well and good for us to say, yeah, like do something that aligns with your purpose or something that makes you happy. But then people are like, well, what will I do? This pays the bills. I have family to take care of. Our house, most houses require two people to work to pay the mortgage. Like again, the odds seem to be stacked against us right now.
It seems that way, right? It seems that when we look at things from that perspective, that the odds are stacked against us. But I personally believe that our reality really is created by how our mind, what our mindset is, and how we perceive things. And yes, I completely agree with you. The realistic nature of how this system is designed, I feel like every time I look into any of the systems out there, they're rigged, right? So things are rigged to keep us in a particular state. And as long as we are playing by the system's rules, we have to follow the system's environmental rules, essentially, right? And so, yeah, I mean, the key is to break your mind out of that particular prison and to look at things a little bit differently and ask, how can I create the type of reality, despite the fact that, yes, I have to operate in the system, I can still feel okay about it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. Interestingly enough, I was listening to a conversation, an interview, by Catherine Austin Fitz. I don't know if you know who she is. She used to be part of the Bush administration. I really like her, even though she's more kind of part of the state. I actually like her. There's something about her. But she was saying this morning that in order for us to actually make real change in the system and whatever it's trying to do to us right now, that it needs to be done one person at a time. And I think that aligns with what you just said. The odds may be stacked against us, And to expect society to just overturn everything overnight is unrealistic. But if we do it one person at a time, we have a better chance.
Exactly. So if we think the way that I think about it is like this, right? So the majority of people that I talk to, they have woken up to this whole idea that we have to take accountability for ourselves. We can't rely on the system. We can't rely on society, on pharmaceuticals, or on all these hacks that are out there. We have to take full radical responsibility and full accountability for how our lives are progressing forward. And each person has to individually do that for themselves. And they can't continue to keep relying on other people to do it for them, which are outsource their decisions or their medical treatments or their medical decisions, their health decisions. We're constantly looking around and saying, well, why didn't anybody tell me? Why didn't my doctor say this or so and so do that? Or why didn't somebody point this out to me? In this day and age, there's so much information out there and it's so freely available that I don't think anybody has really any excuse to be unaware, uneducated, or not know what to do, right? And so each person needs to take radical responsibility and accountability for their own actions. And I think that's happening, right? So I think that's happening. Unfortunately, we have the AI portion coming in now where we're outsourcing our own brains to AI, which I'm very curious to see what's going to happen there.
Mm. It's worrying. It is worrying. I'm not naive to the fact that AI could take my job. It's quite worrying, but I have two sons. I think you have one son, and I'm like, well, one of my son is getting his apprenticeship for heavy duty mechanics, but the other son, I'm like, you need to learn to do something with your hands. It's the only way you're gonna have like some sort of a future. I mentioned to him be a plumber. He was not impressed with that at all. But something, which is, so you've got the pros and the cons there with AI. It is pushing us back to the more kind of industrial age in that aspect of things. But continuing to what we kind of have spoken about now in the first 15 or so minutes, with the way we're living now and the way society has stacked the odds against us, like the stress that a lot of us women are experiencing now and overwhelm. And like I said, we're busy being busy. We're just going all the time. Like, and again, I'm very blessed at what I do, but there's moments where I'm like, oh my God, does it ever end? Like, and I know a lot of women say that. Like, does it ever end? And one thing I hear a lot is women in the evenings when I'm kind of referencing their bad habits in the evening, they'll tell me a lot of the time, oh, the reason I'm having this bottle of wine or I'm having the chips or the snacks in the evening is because it's the only time I get for myself. Like that's it. You were in that position too. Tell us a bit about that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It was alcohol, sugar, overeating, binging, and just using really anything to help me cope with my internal state of frustration, overwhelm, super stressed, tiredness, and just having absolutely no space to process anything. And it's very common, right? Emotional eating is very common, especially with women, because it's so socially acceptable, right? No one's going to send you to rehab for eating, in my case, an entire jar of Nutella or a pint of ice cream every night. And no one's going to say, hey, you're too fat. You need to like lose some weight. Like nobody's going to say that. And so you just continue using those substances essentially to help you cope because you're so miserable and you're not getting what you need emotionally, right? You're emotionally starved. And I'm hearing this all over the place. I'm hearing that loneliness is at a skyrocketing rate right now. People are experiencing just really critical loneliness. And that's just another aspect to like what the heck is going on in this world, you know?
You said we're emotionally starved, and I'll add in we're emotionally exhausted as well. We're just exhausted. And I had neuroscientist on the podcast a few weeks ago, Amanda Wiggins. She's great. And we were discussing how loneliness is actually a factor in the development of dementia as you get older. A lot of women around mid 30s, 40s now are starting to see dementia in their parents. And that's a fear factor in itself, yet we continue to do these habits that we're doing that are going to increase our risk for the likes of dementia and other diseases, of course.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. So you grew up in Europe. You'll identify with what I'm saying. So when you go to other countries, there's so much more of a community aspect there, right? People are a lot more engaged with each other. They socialize a lot more here. And it's so interesting because every time I go back to Europe and I get to experience that again, and I come back to the United States, it's really depressing. There's an air of depression here because we're so disconnected, you know? And then, I always think about it like, why are we so disconnected from one another? Well, number one, we're working 16 hours a day per day. A lot of times our commute are 1 or 2 hours each way. So like 4 hour commute per day plus your work day. Of course, you're going to come home and be completely exhausted. If you're working virtually, you're on 24/7. There are no hours of the day when you're not working. If you're working from home, it's constant. And people are spread out all over the place. Parents and aging parents are living in completely different states than their children. The communal aspect of life is disappeared here. And so we're all sitting in our own little bubbles and we're not communicating with anybody. We're not connecting with anybody. And it is lonely here, I think, much more so than in other countries.
I would add in, and I've mentioned this a few times, and just before I say this, I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty for their choices, but it's very different to how we do it in Ireland and England and Europe. And that is the like after school or before school activities and all the sports that people have their kids in. It's absolutely insane here. In Ireland, you might have GAA or soccer, you'd go after school, you'd walk down to the field, you might have one match every few weekends. Your parents would drop you off, they'd come back, pick you up, and it was like down the road. It wasn't a long drive. Obviously, we have an advantage. Our communities are smaller, everything's closer, but it wasn't a lot of time. Here in Canada, and it still blows my mind, they're bringing their kids to ringette training, hockey training at like 6 a.m. in the morning before school. And then they're doing it after school, and they're doing swimming, and they're doing dance and basketball. But then hold on, every single weekend there seems to be some sort of competition or tournament. And because of how big Canada is, if it's not local, so if you're not sitting by a hockey rink or a basketball court Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so you've no weekend to yourself, and all you're doing is dragging your kids around, it's, in my opinion, that's a complete pain in the ass. But because Canada's so big, if you're not doing that, then you're driving to a different province, like 7 hours that way, seven this way. And like, okay, we all want our kids to succeed. We all want them to kind of get that skill set that you get from doing hard things and sports. But come on, like, where is the line? And I said this to a client earlier because she's like, my son's in club basketball now, and she's like, I have no time anymore. And I'm like, I know, like, I say this realistically, what are the chances of your kid being in the NBL or the NHL? Like, are they really going to make a career out of this? Like, there's, again, I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty, but maybe as outsiders, me and you see it in a different light. Like, this is not normal.
Yeah, I've seen it as an insider. So I've seen, but from a soccer perspective. So the soccer practices were every single day, 5 days a week. And then the matches were both Saturday and Sunday. So it was 7 days a week of running in every direction possible. And if the kids are in two different sports, which a lot of parents do, mine was only in one, which was soccer. It is it is like it's more than a full-time job. And what I saw firsthand was that she was very tired. She was exhausted. There was a lot of pressure put on the children right now. Even high school soccer was extremely competitive. It wasn't a pleasant experience whatsoever. And I think that that plays a really big role in mental health for our children. And of course, they don't have any downtime. So essentially, what are we teaching our kids? We're teaching that, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., you're going to school, and then 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., you're going to hustle really hard and try and get into whatever team you're trying to get on, and there's no downtime. So we're conditioning them for that mentality of having absolutely no space. And that goes into their adulthood and, down the road into their 30s and 40s. And then they wake up one day and they're like, what the heck? What just happened?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's
It
no
is
going back.
insane.
You've already done the damage. There's no going back. So let's discuss this health aspect. Because one of my clients springs to mind. She's been a pro dancer all her life. They're very disciplined. They're practicing pushing their body to extremes year after year, competition after competition, like they're dancing at high levels. So I've been working with the mom for years and a constant uphill battle. Her central nervous system is just screwed. Her hormones, metabolism, like it's just a challenge, when you've done so much to your body over the years, it's very hard to come back from it. So then this is a family thing, so she has her young girls in dance ever since they were small, and they're doing all the competitions, and they move their bodies in ways that me and you can like never even dream of doing. Like it's such, I would put it down to being a way more demanding shall we say, sport than hockey, soccer, basketball. Like it's insane the level these women train at and push their bodies, and they're doing competitions, and it's like extremely competitive. It's crazy. But she booked a consultation with her daughter, who's 20, with me a few weeks ago to help with her hormones, having menstrual issues and lots of cycle problems. And I'm like halfway through the call and I'm like, how do I say this? That you're following in your mom's footsteps, that the years of harsh dance and gruel that you've put on your body, and you're only 20, is now showing up in a hormone dysfunction, not even imbalance, dysfunction. And unless you stop this, there's no way out. It's just going to keep getting worse and worse. Like, how do you even say that to someone?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these super competitive sports require, ballet is another one, right? They require the body weight to stay down, and it requires a lot of physical effort. And so the two things combined together, a lot of times women lose their periods. So, for example, in bodybuilding, it's very common when you're getting ready to get on stage to have such a lean body mass. So almost very little body fat that a lot of women lose their cycle. And so, I mean, that should be, a very first sign that, you're entering it into an extreme zone where if you do that too many times and if you put your body through such extreme conditions too many times, it will obviously have an effect. So yeah, I don't know. To me, if something now, if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel healthy, when it starts entering into the adrenal system or the hormonal system and starts having an effect, you have to look at it because works on the other side of it as well, right? So it's not just over training, over dancing, low body fat. You have a certain effect of that type of habit, right? But you also have it on the other side of it, overweight, overeating, under training, that causes problems hormonally as well.
Mm. Yeah, and that's why balance is so important, but how we all perceive balance is quite different. And then on the other side of it as well, we're not just speaking about the physical aspect, back to that mental aspect. You're in this competitive mode. And as well, I'm sure there's an element where they don't want to disappoint their mom either. That in itself is stressful, trying to live up to standards that are maybe even unachievable. Like there's a lot to be considered in everything we do nowadays. It's all the things.
Yeah, it's very tricky with children. That is you want them to be successful and competitive and pursue things, but then at the same time, it creates a lot of other issues that may or may not be aware of at the time. It's very tricky. And at the end of the day, it's a personal choice. Right. So, in my opinion, if somebody's 20 years old and this is not what they want to do, they should have the awareness that this is not something they want to do wholeheartedly. Because when you're pursuing something like that, you have to prioritize it. You have to sacrifice a lot, including your health. It's not just your time and your days and your life. You're sacrificing your health to achieve this incredible result. You have to be willing to do it, and when you're not into it 110%, the question is why do you want to sacrifice all of this if you're not even into it?
And I suppose that's the perfect segue to what I wanted to go back to. With your journey, you got to a stage where you were so sick and unhealthy and unhappy, and you're like, this has to stop, like something has to change. And that's where the choice comes in. You made a choice. You had no, well, I would argue you had no choice. It was either go to your deathbed early and continue on what you're doing or turn your life around. A lot of people I feel don't like that word choice. They don't want to think they have a choice. They don't want to think that it's their choices that got them to where they are. It's your choice that you're in so much pain or you're overweight. Like, I'm not trying to be nasty, but nobody likes to hear this. The people, you mentioned responsibility. Unfortunately, not everybody wants to take responsibility. They would rather point the finger in a different direction. But it is a choice. It's all a choice. And what me and you do, it's a choice. We all have our own choices to make, and then you see the results or the repercussions of that based on your choice. So you got to a stage where you're like, I'm midlife now. I can't keep going on like this. You had to make a choice. I want to hear what you decided to do because I have a lot of clients in this position right now. They need to make a choice.
So good, so good. So there's so many things we do not have a choice in, right? We have no control over, like, the color of my hair, how tall I am, like all these things, I have no choice about it. But personally, I feel like 80% of how our life manifests over time is a result of the choices that we make 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? And so the way that I feel and look and function right now, today, is a result of the choice I made 11 years ago to make the necessary changes I had to make, whatever those were going to be, to get myself back together. So the first thing I did is I did not give myself a timeline. I didn't say, oh, I have to get this figured out in the next 3 months, right? There was no time limit. I decided then and there this was going to be my life. I'm going to do this every single day. There's not going to be an end to this. Once I get the right formula, I'm not going to make it a diet or make it something that I'm going to quit. So, how can I make it sustainable enough that I can do this for the rest of my life? Because I'm not going back to where I am, right? And so that was the mindset that I had to take on. I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, and whatever that is, I need to be able to enjoy it. I need it to be fun. I need it to be sustainable. I'm not doing another crash diet. I'm not doing another juice cleanse. I'm not doing a detox. I have to be able to sustain this for the until I'm 100 years old,
Mhm.
right? And so that was the mindset. That was the first thing. I had to change my mindset. Then the next, because up until that point, everything was, oh, do it and then quit, do it and then quit, do it, yo-yo constantly. And so when I made that change, I knew then that this was going to stick. So that was number one, because that was it. That was the last time I was going to do it. That was the last diet. That was the last exercise plan. That was it. Then I became aware. That was the second thing. I became aware of all of the nonsensical thoughts that were constantly ruminating in my head and were shit talking me basically and telling me that this decision I just made to do this for the rest of my life is crazy. I'm crazy. This is insane. Who do I think I am? Like, I would hear all kinds of things in my mind. Like, what are you, like some kind of celebrity or something? Like, why do you deserve to like go to the gym an hour a day? That's for rich people. That's for like celebrity. Like all of this stuff. I had to address the negative thoughts that were constantly in my mind. So that was the second thing. And then everything else was easy.
Mm.
Once I got control of those two things, everything else was easy. I mean, going to the gym, lifting weights is really easy, ladies. It's not that difficult. Figuring out how much protein to eat and how many carbs and figuring out portion sizes is not that difficult. It's how difficult you want to make it. And that comes from in whatever's going on in your mind. And those were the three things. And then everything just kind of started flowing as long as I had my mind in the right place.
I think a lot of our listeners would argue that maybe it's not difficult, but finding the time is difficult. And I suppose we'd have to agree with them on some level because we did just make the argument that we're super stressed and we're super busy. So you can see where people have the challenge. I'm curious, with your journey, would you say, because I've said this many times about my own journey, I hit rock bottom. And that's when I knew, and you reminded me of what I say when you said there's no going back. There's like in that's not even a second thought in my mind. Like just don't even bother to ask me that question. I'll never go back. To me, that was me hitting rock bottom. Because if you're at rock bottom, there is no down. You're there. There's only up. Did you hit rock bottom? And then my second question is, as much as we discuss nutrition and weightlifting and everything so much, do you think the majority though of it is all in the mind? It's mindset. If you don't have your mind, you're almost wasting your time trying to do other stuff because again, you're going to convince yourself you don't have the time, you can't do it, you're too weak, you don't deserve. I have to stay up and watch this show. It's the only time I get to myself. I don't want to miss out on the pizza that everyone else is happening. Like all the minds, but don't let me answer for you. I want to hear from you.
Yeah, so I didn't hit rock bottom. Rock bottom hit me multiple times. Multiple times. Okay. I have so many super embarrassing stories of things that happened to me at work, with clients, with getting hospitalized. I didn't get it the first time. It took two hospitalizations for me to be like, oh, maybe I need to do something about this. I had one instance, really funny story. I was so the company that I was running at the time when all this was happening was a media and technology company. IT, right? So we were at this event and in New Jersey, and this event had almost every celebrity that lives in New Jersey or was in New Jersey or came to New Jersey for this particular event. And names you've heard of. And so I had a microphone and I was running with the mic, every TV station, Bravo, Entertainment News, all these guys were behind the red carpet. And I had also a cameraman and I was walking around interviewing some of these people. And guess what? I tripped on a wire, fell face down on the red carpet in front of everybody in all of my obesity. Okay. Mortifying, right? That didn't wake me up. I had a client, it was a fitness brand. I was working for this fitness brand in all of my obesity, look me up and down and fire me. I've had all kinds of interesting things happen, and none of these things were enough for me to say, like, man, you really need to get your act together. Like this is embarrassing for you, right? Even my vanity was not enough. And
Why?
so
Why was it not? I'm asking why because I have all these clients who are at what they think is rock bottom, but I don't think it is. But they have all these experiences, and I'm like, has this opened your eyes? Does this motivate you to be better? But it doesn't. Why?
because that voice, that mindset that this is not possible, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter what you look like, and you could never do this. You failed so many, like that's the narrative that runs in our minds, that you have failed so many times. This is not for you. You're not some celebrity. You're never gonna look good. Forget about it. You're over the hill, right? Or maybe you look good in your 20s, but like you're now over the hill. You're 40 years old. Nobody's even looking at you. Nobody cares. And so this is constantly, constantly running. And until you become aware of that voice, because a lot of times we don't even know that that's how we're talking to ourselves. We don't have that awareness until you catch it and you confront it and you say, well, why not? Why not me? What's wrong with me? And until you go out and look for evidence out in the world of other women doing it and succeeding and having these types of stories, your mind will continuously try to convince you that it's not possible, it's fake, you're never going to get it done. It's not going to work. You are so special, Terry, that all the stuff that worked for all these other women, it's not going to work for you. You're a lost case. Like you're a lost cause. Special situation. You're really messed up. And so that's what goes on. And until you break that cycle of shame, failure, more binging, more shame, until you put some kind of a wrench in it, it continues.
Yeah. Well, I did have another question, and I've asked some other guests before. I'm always curious to hear everyone's answers. I think you've already answered it, but I'll ask you again. Why do you think so many women in midlife give up on themselves? They just stop showing up, they just throw in the towel, and they just settle for where they're at, not just in their careers, but their marriages, how they look, their weight, their health. Like, why do so many women just give up?
Mhm. Fear, I think. Fear that we're aging. Because in my opinion, a woman's biggest fear is losing her beauty. Personally, that's really what I think. Like as a personal fear. I'm not talking about children and parents and family and things like that, but personally, like inside of you, your biggest fear, my biggest fear used to be that I'm just going to become invisible. The more I age, I'm going to lose my beauty. I'm going to become invisible. Nobody really cares. So why bother?
That's interesting. Nobody's answered that before, and that's quite genuine. I can pick up from you. It is genuine what you're saying. I would, I actually thought you were going to get into the direction of, well, they're just tired. They're just so exhausted they don't have it in them anymore to show up. Or, of course, a lot of us talk about the hormonal changes and influences there, which is definitely an argument to be made. But I never thought of it the way you said it. We're afraid of just losing who we are and becoming invisible. And of course, I would wonder, is there do you, I'm just going to ask you that straight, do you compare yourself to younger women now as well, like in their 20s, and you're like, she's so beautiful and perfect, and here I am getting older, and that just makes the struggle worse?
That is such a good question. I don't. I really don't. I see a beautiful woman in her young days, and I'm happy for her, especially if she has her act together.
Mm.
But would I ever want to go back to being 20 years old? Hell no. That is honest to God. I was miserable in my 20s and 30s and most of my 40s and most of my teenage years. Would I want to be with this mindset, go back to being 20? Yes, I would consider that. But would I want to go back to being 20 years old as a real true 20-year-old? Absolutely. I suffered a lot. And I took a lot of work for me to get here. And I'm very happy where I'm at. In almost 50, I'm happy with how I look. I love my mindset. And it's a tribute to a lot of hard work that I did. And I don't know if I want to give up that benefit of doing the work because it's gotten me to this place. And quite frankly, I don't feel like my age is, or, youth is for everybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I
I don't
do.
need to be admired essentially for being young
Yeah,
because in my opinion, it wasn't that good. Wasn't that great for me?
I was awesome in my 20s because I had already started my journey and started kind of finding myself. But I look at young girls now and I'm like, man, she's beautiful, she's slim, but she's probably nuts. Young women nowadays are nuts, and I do not want to be like them. I'm so much more resilient and probably more intelligent. Please, nobody get offended, but it's years of experience and wisdom. And I know I see the world very differently to how these 20-year-olds. And this, of course, I speak to a lot of them and their moms, and they're all on medication, and I wasn't on medication, and there's just a lot of dysfunction. So I'm like, yeah, you look amazing, but you're probably insane. And I feel sorry for whatever man has to go down that road. Like, they're different to what we were like when we were that age. And probably because of the whole, I tried to tell my kids, there was no mobile phones until I was like 16 or 17. And even then, it was like you had to pay for it. You'd get like €5 a week, and your parents would let you buy like a top-up card. You could either text someone like in black and white, that was it, or call them. That was all you could do. And so and then it was usually like, I'll meet you at 4:30 after school, and then you go hang out with people. So we're hanging out with people, we're learning how to talk to people. Like, it was easy to date back then, I thought, because I knew how to talk to people. I knew how to be myself. I know how to be around people. Now young people have no idea what they're doing. They're completely, for lack of a better word, insane. And we could blame social media on a big aspect of that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have social media when I was growing up, but I was pretty insane. I had the craziest hormonal shifts around my period. I was a nightmare, let me tell you. I don't even, when I think back to how absolutely crazy and insane I was during my period years, I don't wish that upon anybody because I didn't know anything about hormonal fluctuation and progesterone was too high or whatever, estrogen dominance. I didn't know anything about that. I was just in the thick of the cycle with all the things that go along with it. And I was just, blah. And now, when looking back, I don't get a period anymore. I don't have those hormonal fluctuations anymore. I've been 6 years completely menopausal, and I'm so happy.
It's
I love it.
it's funny how we experience things so differently as well. Because I had no hormonal, like, I had no issues with my periods. Never have, like, I never had the pain. But I had friends who would miss days off school and I was overweight. Like, I was 280 pounds at one stage. And I wasn't super active. We walked a lot because you didn't really have a choice back then. And I wonder, did that play a part as well in me not having cycle issues? But it's interesting how we all experienced it so different. But in saying that, I think your experience is more common than not nowadays with younger girls than my experience was.
I mean, I don't work with younger girls. I can only tell you what I've noticed from observing my daughter. Same thing, right? So a lot of things happen that she doesn't even realize are hormonal. And so I pointed out to her and I'm like, yeah, this is probably happening because of XYZ. And then she goes, yeah, yeah, whatever. You think everything is hormones. But I'm like, but it is. Everything is hormones. And then a couple of days later, she goes, yeah, you're kind of right. It was that. I think that's what it was. And there's so little education on this, right? They don't teach that in schools. They barely give us any kind of information on how the body works and what kind of food it needs or what kind of nutrition and so forth. And yeah, I think it's common. It's very individual, though. I think everyone has a very different experience. Mine was crazy.
What we do learn, and even what women know about their bodies nowadays, it's so like superficial. We know like the very top layer, we know how to get pregnant. That's pretty much what most women know. I had mentioned in one of my groups the other day that if around ovulation your cervical mucus is extra thick and stringy, it usually indicates you've got higher estrogen. And most women are like, what? How have I never heard about this before? Or that you burn 300 calories extra each day in your luteal phase if you ovulated. Most women are like, hold on, I never knew this. If I knew this, maybe I could have lost weight easier as well. But we're not told the fine details that would actually help us both on our journey and to understand our body. It's bloody crazy.
Yes. Absolutely agree with you. And it explains a lot of behavior, right? So it explains why we're extra hungry, maybe, or extra tired during certain phases of the cycle, and why we have more energy in some days and less on, because the body is doing things. And then, same thing with pregnancy. If you look at how hormonal fluctuations play out in our lives, we have the very first big transition, which is adolescence. And then we have all the little mini transitions of having the cycle every month or so. And then you have a pregnancy, potentially. Some women don't, some women do. You have a big hormonal shift there. And it's all normal. And then we get into the perimenopause, menopause state. And now it's the end of the world. Now it's like, this is a disease, something's wrong with us, blah, blah, blah. But we don't think that way about adolescence or pregnancy or even during the regular cycle. But perimenopause and menopause is a terrible thing. It's a disease. We have to get on pharmaceutical drugs to deal with it. We have to take 100 different supplements. And it's like, what the heck is going on?
Or antidepressants. I think that's one of the biggest sins played against women ever is that you need an antidepressant during perimenopause. That's just scandalous. But like Dr. Geraldine Pryor, she discusses that perimenopause is our second puberty. But nobody else tells us that. And unless you listened to us now talking or you were aware of her work, nobody else is telling us this, so we wouldn't know to even think of it like that. It's just another hormonal shift. Maybe we're going a bit crazy again, like we were in puberty, but it is
Right.
normal. It's not enjoyable, but it's normal, and there's things you can do to make it easier. And like the argument we made in the beginning, worse for some women depending on their situation, their stress, their lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't, like you said, it's not the end of the world. There's stuff that we can do about it. So, with that said, this has been wonderful. Um, for women who are going through the perimenopause midlife transition now, who are feeling lost and who are doing what we mentioned, they're just not putting themselves first. They're go, go, go all the time. They're turning to a bottle of wine and Nutella in the evening and everything. They want to make a change, but they don't know how. What would you say to them?
So first thing, reprioritizing yourself. You are worth having, paying attention to yourself. It's worth the effort. It does work. It's not a waste of time. You will feel better. You will see results. And once you get your lifestyle and your habits and your mindset in a more positive place, things will start to feel a little bit easier. Now, is it difficult in the beginning? Yes, it is, because you're making a lot of changes, but take it step by step. So make one small change once a month and keep to that change. So let's say, for example, you want to start moving more. Walk 10,000 steps a day every day for 30 days. And then once you have that habit pretty well down and you're feeling good about it, add checking on how much protein you eat every day and start tweaking that. And then once you get comfortable there, add something else, right? So maybe add a little bit of resistance training, a few dumbbell exercises from home. You can even do that at your desk, at work, anywhere, really. It doesn't have to be a really big production. So the simpler we make it, the easier it is to sustain it. And of course, think about what is your priority in this stage of
Mhm.
life. Is it going to be like that forever? No. We're going to come out of this transition eventually, right? Things are going to calm down. But during this time, maybe you should make yourself the priority instead of everything and everybody else.
Mhm. One thing I say to my clients a lot is, like, you really have to ask yourself, what do you really want for yourself? Like, really, really want for yourself. So I love what you said. That was great. It's like, I think what I got from that is stop giving yourself these timelines. Stop saying I have to do this by this date. Just start, keep showing up every day. And like you said, with your own journey, tell yourself, like, this is it now. This is my life. I'm not going to be trying anything else. And that takes away that kind of idea of, oh my God, I have to do this within 6 months or a year. And then when you don't do it, you're a failure. You feel even worse about yourself. So I love that. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I generally do. I love all my conversations, but when there's something about speaking to another European, we get along a lot better. So, where can people find you and discover more of what, not just what you're saying, but how you're inspiring and helping other women?
You can find me on Instagram. My name there is How Good Can It Get? And again, my name is Terry Tateossian, and I just share stuff that makes me happy on there. And you can also find me on my website, thehouseofarose.com. And on there, we offer in-person retreats and coaching and things like that. So if you're interested, hit me up on Instagram.
That's a really lovely name for your website.
Thank you.
Yeah, it suits you. You look like a rose.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time today, Terry. Once all of this is up, I'll put all the details and tag you, of course. Hope you have a great day. Maybe we'll chat again in the future. I'm sure this has been super helpful for a lot of women.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate it. I loved every minute.
Good. Thank you. It was lovely to meet you too. Bye bye.
Bye.